What is up, people? This is Luis Joel, and I'm going to show you guys how I make my barbecue smoked St. Louis style spare ribs. Super easy to make, and it tastes absolutely delicious. So yeah, let's get into it. We're going to be using St. Louis style pork spare ribs that I get from Costco. It's a 3-pack. We're just going to first start off by opening up the package from the airtight sealed package. Make sure you have a sharp knife, just because if you have a sharper knife, you'll be less likely to cut yourself. This knife I got from Dollar Tree. It's a pretty cheap knife. Just find yourself something cheap and usable. Once you remove the ribs from the packaging, you want to take care to remove the purge. That stuff is toxic. You definitely want to rinse out the ribs when you remove them from the package. Just want to give them a nice light rinse just to get off all the blood and the juice out of there. Give them a nice good wash. And definitely rinse out the containers so you don't have any cross-contamination. We're going to start drying off these ribs. You want to pat them dry with some paper towel. Okay, after we dry the ribs, we're going to remove the membrane on the back of the ribs. You could use a butter knife, a fork, or whatever you have at your disposal. And sometimes it's easier to use a paper towel to pull it just because it gets a little slippery. The reason we remove the membrane from the ribs is so that way the ribs are a little more tender when they're finished. And some people don't just bite into a hard, chewy piece of membrane when they're eating the ribs. Some people remove them, some people don't. Some people score them. I'd rather just remove them altogether. It's just so much. I just feel like it's a better product overall. Sometimes you might need to use something to help you out. It might be a little slippery. So you see here, I use my knife to, help me wedge my finger in there. You want to take your time, just because it's going to rip. And if it rips, it's no biggie. You just keep trying to, use a butter knife or whatever. These are the seasonings that we're going to be using today. This is my usual mix. This is my barbecue mix. Again, use the proportions to however you like. And when you season your ribs, make sure you get plenty of rub everywhere. Some people like to rub the seasoning in. I like to just lightly rub and then pat it just to get it in there. Just because you might rub the seasoning off when you're doing that. Get a nice even coat. Alright, this is how the ribs are supposed to look. We're going to let the seasoning sit and let the salt draw out the moisture from the ribs and let it sweat through. I'll catch you in the smoker. I like to smoke with my 29-inch Nexgrill barrel smoker. This is one I got from Home Depot. Gonna use my trusty old rusty charcoal chimney. Gonna fill it up with some charcoal briquettes. I'm just using some paper towel soaked in some grease that I cleaned out from the grill. Alright, the charcoal is nice and lit. Can't really see it too well, but starting to flame up a bit now. Always make sure to wear heat-resistant gloves when you're handling hot coals, otherwise you're going to burn yourself. I'm going to be using a mixture of oak, hickory, and cherry wood. As you can see, I don't really have a saw, so I got to split these logs by hand with an axe. Don't try this at home, kids. Those splits are really burning now. As you guys can see, my grill's a little dirty, so I'm just gonna scrape it down. Gonna wipe it down real quick with a paper towel while it's super hot. Then I'm gonna spray it down with some canola oil spray just to make sure everything's nice and seasoned. Make sure you get it even all over the place while it's super hot. And I'm just gonna be using this pork ribs rib rack divider. Alright, and I'm gonna spray this down so that way the ribs don't stick to it. The reason I use this rib rack divider is so that way I can maximize the space in my smoker. My smoker is not that big, so there's only so many ribs I could really fit in it flat. This little device just allows me to fit all three of them in while keeping, you know, enough space in between them so they get enough airflow. Alright, and then these ribs are looking good. We're gonna check back on them in about an hour and a half. Alright, it's been an hour and a half, and we're going to start spraying these guys. Using a 50-50 mixture of water and apple juice. And I'm going to be spraying it with my trusty hog sprayer. This thing just really does a good job at like getting an even spray all over. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip these over so that way I get a nice even cook on both sides. And I could, you know, spray it on both sides as well. As you can see, the ribs are looking nice and red, and they got that nice mahogany color. You want to make sure and spray both sides so you get a nice even coat all around. Alright, we're going to check back in another hour and a half. Okay, it's been about 2 hours and a half in the smoker, and we're going to give them another coat of spray. And they're starting to really get nice and red now. We're going to check back in another half hour, and then we're going to take these ribs right off of the smoker and get them into the house to start wrapping them. Alright, it's been a total 3 hours in the smoker, and these ribs are ready to come off. We're going to take them out of the smoker, and we're going to bring them inside to start the next phase of the cook, which is wrapping them. Alright, and these are the ingredients that I'm going to be using to wrap the ribs in. You could use butcher paper or aluminum foil, whichever you have at your disposal. Give them some brown sugar for some sweetness. And if you notice with this one, I forget to drizzle the agave syrup. So just pretend that I put the agave syrup in there. And you want to wrap these nice and tight so that way there's not a lot of air pockets. The tighter it is, the quicker it'll cook, and it'll kind of just steam in there. And this will help tenderize the ribs so they fall off the bone. Yeah, I didn't forget the agave syrup this time. You want to wrap the ribs like a Christmas gift. We're going to put these ribs in the oven to finish cooking so that way they fall off the bone tender. We're going to be baking these ribs in the oven at about 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about, let's say 50 minutes to an hour, just to tenderize them up. Alright, it's been about 50 minutes already, and we're going to check the ribs for tenderness. And the way you know if they're tender or not is if you just bend them and they're, they just bend like nothing with no resistance. If they're a little stiff, then they might need a little more time. We're going to take them out of the packaging. Be careful because they're really hot. And now we're going to put the barbecue sauce on. Another way you can tell that the ribs are really tender is if they start to pull back from the bone. As you can see, these guys are pretty tender. And this barbecue sauce I'm using is just Sweet Baby Ray's. Use whatever, your favorite barbecue sauce you have in your fridge. And we're going to throw these in the oven to broil and just to crust up the sauce. And there you have it, guys. This is how the ribs look. They're nice and crusted up and they have the sauce on them. They're just ready to chop up and ready to serve as is. I'm going to be using my trusty Chinese cleaver to chop these up. If you notice, these ribs are pretty tender, but they're not like falling apart either. We're not making pulled pork here. I like my ribs to be falling off the bone, but I still like them to have a bite to them, not to just completely fall apart. And there you guys have it. Barbecue smoked St. Louis style spare ribs. They're sweet, they're spicy, and they have that delicious smoky flavor. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.